Blog Talk Radio.
It's Saturday. You know what that means. Block Talk Radio proudly brings you the latest edition of Working the Marks. And I am New Jersey's premier journalist, the professor, Fernando Uribe, and he is New Jersey's premier wrestling analyst, the illustrious PBR, here join us this week on Block Talk Radio. What's going on, brother?
It's a sad day in professional wrestling, my brother. It's the day that I hope would never happen, the day that I can officially say I've lost my smile. Vince McMahon retired. Oh, my God. All right, I'm gonna man up here. I'm gonna wipe my tears away, and I'm gonna give my best effort and put on the goddamn best show I can today for Vincent Kennedy McMahon.
That's right. Spoken like a trooper. That's why I love my amazing co-host here. And folks, if you ever want to reach out to the show's inbox, we love to hear from you. Shoot us an email whenever you can. workingthemarks@gmail.com. Once again, workingthemarks@gmail.com. For those of you, hey, listen, you know, you're always walking around with your smartphone, right? With your iPhone. Hey, shoot us an email. If you're walking around with a flip phone, right, those Android stuff that still apparently people like, shoot us an email, you know, on there. Maybe the keys are a little bit, might take a bit longer since you have to click, you know, one key at a time there, but on the flip phone. But again, folks,
you
write to us, Working the Marks. What's that?
You can swipe, you know that, right? You can swipe.
Yeah, on Tinder, Bumble. I do that a lot. Yeah, I do that. I swipe right on some girls there, you know, that I find interesting. That's the swiping I do. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'm swiping left on your talk, you know.
Okay, there you go. All right, well, folks, again, check us out on Instagram, at working _ marks. Check out, of course, my amazing co-host Instagram at Patty Rican. That's PADDYRICAN, and of course, check out my Instagram as well. Do you know the origin of that, Fern? Did I ever tell you the origin of that nickname? I think you did, but shoot it to me again, bro.
Okay, so I am a huge football fan. Not American hand egg. It's like real football. I like American hand egg, too. Don't get me wrong. I like NFL. But I refer to soccer, as most Americans call it. I refer to it by its proper name of football. I'm a huge fan of the Premier League. I also watch La Liga as well, and pretty much anything that's going on. So I go to Mulligan's down in Hoboken, big football bar in the area. Big shout out to Paul, Larry, and the guys down there, the lads over there. You know, good time, proper crack over there. So you ever want to stop in, that's a true Irish pub over there in Irish Row in Hoboken. And I was hanging out with the Irish folks, and they didn't believe that my name was Patrick and that I wasn't somehow Irish. So I had explained to them how my mother grew up in New York City, and, you know, all her friends, they were all connected to the church, and her Irish friends, she decided to name me Patrick, although my father's name's Patricio. But anyways, one of the guys there said, "Hey, you're Puerto Rican. Your name's Patty. Patty Rican." And that was it. That was the day that Patty Rican was born. So big shout out to the lads over there in Mulligan, and thanks for the Instagram handle.
And you know what? It's a great bar to go to, not during the NFL season because you have degenerate Eagles fans that go there. So if you want to, clearly you need a tetanus shot, folks, before you go to Mulligan's between September and December during the NFL season. Not so much during football season because obviously we have a lot more classier people frequenting Mulligan's during that time period, but not during the NFL, especially during on Sundays when the Eagles are playing. So make sure you shout us out on Instagram, folks. Also on Twitter. Hit up PBR at PatrickSKVM. And, of course, hit me up on Twitter as well, at NoFilterUribe. don't forget to working the marks on Facebook. A shout out to our administrator there. I won't go by his government name, but
Dee Rotten.
He's
Dee Rotten.
That's Dee Rotten. That's at DEE Rotten, folks. So shout out to him and all the good work he does for us on the show every single week in promotions and advertising and really getting us out there on social media. Without him, folks, again, we wouldn't be able to reach as many people as we do. So we are eternally grateful for Dee Rotten for sure. Pat, a lot to go over. Obviously, we know the big news of the week, but we'll get to that because it is our main event story this week. But in other news, certainly StarCast Productions will be emanating from Nashville next Sunday, July the 31st, from the National Municipal Auditorium. It will be Ric Flair's last match, let's hope, at the tender age of 73. It was announced this week at a press conference that Ric Flair will be teaming with his son-in-law, Andrade El Idolo, against Jay Lethal and Jeff Jarrett, the Slapnut, along with his wife, Karen Jarrett, in the main event. We'll get to that in a moment because it was a great angle this week where Jay Lethal and Jeff Jarrett jumped Ric Flair in the parking lot, left him bloodied, certainly trying to hype up their match coming up next Sunday. But some other great stars on this card, man. Again, I'm someone who certainly likes to watch independent wrestling, other promotions getting involved here with StarCast. We got Josh Alexander defending the Impact World Heavyweight Championship against Jacob Fatu from the famous Fatu family. I think that's going to be a hell of a match. Triple threat for the Impact Women's Championship. Jordan Grace versus Deonna Purrazzo and Rachel Ellering. We got Killer Cross along with Scarlett. Thank the Lord we get to see her on Fight TV if you order it, folks, on pay-per-view, against Davey Boy Smith Jr. Some other interesting names as well. Ricky and his son Kerry Morton with Robert Gibson in their corner will take on Brian Pillman Jr. and Brock Anderson with his father Arn Anderson in their corner. The American Wolves, one of those original Impact tag teams of Eddie Edwards and Davey Richards, will take on the Motor City Machine Guns, Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin. And the very interesting, maybe a past versus the present, who knows, but regardless, Marshall and Ross, the Von Erich boys, the sons of Kevin Von Erich, will take on the Briscoes, Jay and Mark. And, of course, a bunkhouse battle royal with all-stars include James Storm, the Cowboy James Storm, Bully Ray, Crowbar, and more to be announced. A nice card, man, if you're into that. People are going to be in Nashville next weekend for SummerSlam. People like wrestling. I'm sure people want to go see Ric Flair in what hopefully will be his last match, Pat. And that got a lot of attention this week on the Dirt Sheets and the news cycle.
First and foremost, I want to say, I'm completely against this. I think Rick is really putting his health at risk. I just feel like, it's kind of a disservice to his legacy when, and even though he wrestled after he lost to Shawn, he went out against Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania, the way he did, your family's there, super touching, super beautiful, emotional moment. And it's just now this is going to be it, and it's, I don't think it's great.
Well, you hope.
I don't think it's going to be it. I don't think he's going to be able to do it after this physically. I just don't. It's a lot. It's very demanding, But hey, Rick's got to make money. Rick's got to do what he's got to do, At the end of the day, too, fucking Ric Flair, dude. Who's going to tell Ric Flair what to do? You know what I mean? Who's going to tell him, hey, Rick, you can't wrestle? Nobody's going to say that to Ric Flair. So, I wish him all the best. I hope he's okay. I hope he makes it out safely, but I just don't think it's a good idea, and I'm honestly tired of seeing old wrestlers that are way past their prime wrestling and potentially risking hurting themselves, because, yeah, all the fans love it now, and they're going to pay their money to stream it, to be there, to, buy gimmicks and all that other stuff, but you're not going to be there when somebody has to wipe his ass or change his diaper when he's older. You're not going to be there when he's going to need help getting places. You're not going to drive him to his appointments, And I just think that it's easy for fans to support this kind of shit without considering what it's actually doing to them. You know what I mean? But that's me. Regardless, I think the card is going to be pretty good for what we see. I'm also happy for my friend Jay Lethal.
It's a solid card, dude. I mean, I get it. It's not the biggest names in pro wrestling and sports entertainment like WWE, because obviously the day before is SummerSlam. But, I mean, you got some really talented people on this card, man. I mean, I know I'm an Impact homer. It's easy for me to sort of pitch Impact guys, but, Josh Alexander against Jacob Fatu, that's going to be a hell of a wrestling match in my opinion, too.
I think that's going to be an excellent match. I also think that probably Elaine, Kramer, or Jerry might show up and do a run in there. Regardless, there's a lot of talent all over the card. It's a good opportunity. And look, whether people want to say it or not, I mean, this could be a memorable show in a few years. This is Ric Flair's last match show. It's a big deal. So yeah, man, I just hope Rick gets through it safely. But the rest of the card should be decent. Happy for Jay, my friend Jay Lethal, to be able to, be a part of history like that. That's cool for him, And again, looks like it should be a pretty action-packed card.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you this much: I think for fans that listen, I've had the privilege of seeing Ric Flair live, so I was very blessed with that. Never everybody has. Pat, I'm with you, bro. Like, I understand. Listen, it's not a good look. This potentially could be disastrous if Ric Flair takes the wrong bump or something. I'm sure that Andrade and Jay and Jeff are going to be very careful. They're going to make sure to protect him. But at the end of the day, for wrestling fans that all they can do is rely on YouTube or Peacock and the WWE Network on there when they want to watch a Ric Flair match, and endure it, through the 75 commercials. But, the chance to see him live one last time. I get it. You're absolutely correct. I'm not discouraging anything you're saying. You're on the mark completely. But I just think that for that one fan that never got to see Rick live, and even in a very, very advanced age, I think to them, the nostalgia, listen, bro, like anything else, nostalgia overwhelms reasoning in almost any sport. Do some athletes stay way past their prime? Absolutely. Listen, case in point, this past week, during the All-Star festivities for MLB, people were relishing seeing, Pujols from the Cardinals. And, seeing Albert Pujols live for some people was like, hey, we're not getting the best of Albert Pujols, but we're seeing him live one last time. And to us, maybe that's enough. And I think that sort of reasoning is what makes sports fans just cling on to nostalgia. Not just pro wrestling, sports entertainment, bro, but, I think in anything.
Well, but Fern, it's kind of easy to say stuff like that, especially when it comes to real sports and stuff. I mean, not to say that wrestling isn't a real athletic endeavor, but it's the physicality that wrestling involves, the type of bumps that it involves, that you have to take, what it can do to your body. It's a lot worse than, let's say, Michael Jordan going back to play one game of basketball. You know what I mean? And that's the thing that worries me, because one bad bump, one thing. Anything can happen. He could take a bad step at the beginning of the match and tear his ACL. It's a possibility. And it's just, to me, it's an unnecessary. I mean, Steve Austin, right? He came back. It was great and stuff like that, but it was very simple. Steve took his 90s bumps, and it was good. Steve's obviously not as old as Rick. Steve's also had a lot of, surgery to help repair a lot of his body, particularly his neck and his knees. But, I mean, I get that, and I understand that fans want to see this nostalgia. I understand that there's kids, my kids never saw Ric Flair wrestle. My kids are going to see Ric Flair wrestle. So that, I get that that's cool and stuff like that, but it's just too risky, man. And again, I keep saying it, and I hope that it doesn't happen, but sooner or later, somebody's going to get seriously hurt, and people are just going to say, you know what? This isn't worth it. This isn't worth it anymore. You know what I mean?
No, you're right.
Sure,
no, you're right.
I would love to see Brett and Sean mix it up one more time, wouldn't you? But do I think that that's a good idea for the both of them? No, I don't.
No, definitely not. No, definitely not. But it should be a good card. Again, it's SummerSlam weekend. People are going to be converging on Nashville next weekend. And there's going to be something for everybody, Pat, whether it's SummerSlam, which is still not struggling to sell tickets. I mean, they've sold over almost 40,000 seats, but in a building like Nissan Stadium where the NFL's Tennessee Titans play, I think the WWE was hoping for a fuller house, but it's not the end of the world. Again, it's still a tough economy, man. for wrestling fans, for disposable income to go and buy tickets at Nashville. It's an outdoor facility. If you know anything about Tennessee at this time of the year, it'll start at 8 o'clock, but I'll tell you, if you're there 2 or 3 hours before tailgating, pre-gaming, it's going to be brutal. Just like, we're kind of suffering through some bad weather this weekend up here in the Northeast, here in New Jersey. We're getting late 90s. That's what we're expecting in Nashville next weekend. So, WWE's going to have as full of a house as possible, but for wrestling fans overall, Pat, there's going to be something for everybody next weekend. And especially with StarCast, I think people are going to be able to say, hey, you know what? Maybe I can't afford to go to SummerSlam. Maybe I'll watch it at a bar nearby or whatever, but guess what? I'll go to the National Municipal Auditorium, which, by the way, folks, if you know anything about wrestling history in the South, I mean, the Municipal Auditorium has a lot of great wrestling history from the days of Mid-South with Jerry Jarrett and, all that promotion. I mean, it's certainly a hotbed for wrestling at one time. It's still sort of historically a really, really important place for wrestling fans, though, Pat. So I think fans won't have a shortage of wrestling to attend to next weekend.
The Marks are going to eat that shit up, The Marks are going to eat that up, dude.
Absolutely. Other wrestling news this week, Pat, some footage, I guess different angles. And it was really relevant because this past Sunday on A&E, they've been doing a great job with these WWE Legends documentaries. Last Sunday, I didn't watch it because I was watching Shark Fest on National Geographic. But, Bill Goldberg's A&E special was up. People who like Goldberg will watch it. People who don't like me won't. But one of the things that's really been sort of hovering over Goldberg's head for some years has been sort of this perception about an incident in the ring with Bret Hart in 1999 where he kicked him, and now footage came out this week that apparently, because, we've been used to one angle for almost 20 years now. We've been used to one angle looking at the way that he kicked Bret Hart, and again, a lot of people speculate that certainly that concussion led to what happened to Bret in 2002 with his stroke. Again, people are going to have opinions on this, Pat, but the footage this week, listen, it might absolve Bill Goldberg because of, you're looking at it and the physics of it, but for some fans, that'll never be enough, though.
I mean, look, dude, I'm sure somewhere right now there's somebody listening to this with a tissue box crying about the same things that Bret's been crying about for years. But, I mean, Bill and him were wrestling. They were trying to have a wrestling match. It's no secret that Bill is not the most technically sound in the ring. He isn't the crispest. He isn't what some might consider to be the best. Bill Goldberg is a squash wrestler. He's a big powerhouse dude. He's kind of like the Ultimate Warrior. He just comes out, does his thing, see you later, alligator, and that's it. Again, I think as time went on, and him working with people that were better than him, he eventually kind of learned how to do it and not kill everybody as much. And I think that at the time, Bret was also starting to kind of wind down. Bret was also starting to get concussions and starting to get injuries and stuff like that. And maybe his recollection was a little too hazy. Maybe it was easy for him to blame Goldberg because Goldberg was this big, gargantuan brute, But regardless of all of that, Bill has apologized multiple times to Bret. And, I think it's pretty sincere. And I think that it's time maybe Bret move on from that. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, what are you going to keep complaining about? What are you going to complain about next? You know what I'm saying? I feel for Bill. Because it's no matter what he does, Bret's just never going to accept it. And I think that it's kind of messed up because, again, he didn't intend to do it. Accidents happen. Things happen in the ring. It is what it is. But to me, it just seems like another thing for Bret to complain about at this point.
Well, Pat, listen, great points as always in the way you break it down. But I think that, realistically, I think that some fans, I don't share this opinion, but I understand fans that have it, and we read the Twitterverse, we read the Instagramverse, we've read the dirt sheets over the years. I just think that, before he came out and redeemed himself, I think, in the eyes of his peers, shortly before his death, with and I'm thinking about the Ultimate Warrior. That was always the knock on Jim Hellwig as the wrestler. Like, he never bothered to get better. He never bothered. And I understand he wasn't booked that way. He was booked to be like this monster, squashing people. I get all that. But for some fans, that was never going to be enough. In their mind, he never bothered to, get better or try to get better. I mean, let's be honest, man. It's not like we didn't watch that DVD, The Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. And I get it. It was more of a hit job DVD. But there are a lot of people who are respected in the business, like Bobby Heenan and others, that looked at Jim Hellwig with these very sort of negative eyes. And I think that he had to drag that around for a lot of years because his peers didn't respect him because he never tried to get better. Now, Bill, on the other hand, clearly is liked by a lot more of his peers, but as a fan, you also sort of some get the perception that Goldberg never tried to get better either. I get it. He was booked in a way where he was also a monster, squashed people. But by the end of the day, though, Pat, if you look at WCW, the tail end of it, I mean, he never bothered to get better. He never worked to get better. And even though he worked with people better than him.
You don't know that. You don't know that. Were you training with him? Were you on the road with him? Were you watching him in the gym? Were you there with him and Colonel Buddy Lee Parker at the power plant? You don't know. You know what I'm saying? So, here's the thing, too, that people don't understand as far as wrestling goes, is it's easy for you to assume that these things are easy to do that you see, but going in there and actually doing them, it's a different thing. You know what I mean? Because there's so many moving parts that you just don't consider. Your footwork, what you have to do with your arms, how you have to position your head, how you have to position this person so they don't get hurt. All these little details. And, with a guy like Bill Goldberg, who was basically only told to do one thing, right, be this powerhouse, and to some extent, you also don't want to make this guy too pretty in the ring. You know what I mean? Because then you take away what he does best. And what he does best is he comes in and he makes it look real. You know what I mean? And sometimes it was, unfortunately. But that's what they felt would help make them successful, and clearly it worked. It takes a long time to grasp a lot of these things that people want to criticize him about. So again, it's one of those scenarios where it's like, if you're in the ring, you kind of understand this stuff, and you kind of know, hey, these are things that might take time. You know what I mean? But to say that Goldberg hasn't tried to improve, come on, that's a bit ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, he's a lot older now. He can't do what he used to do. The thing with The Undertaker, that was a prime example. There was some, him giving himself a concussion. Again, he does things that don't really help himself. But to say that he hasn't tried to improve, I think is kind of unfair. And I think you look at the match quality as his career went on, and the match quality was better, dude. The match quality got better. He had a match with Shawn Michaels. He had a match with Triple H. Mm-hmm. He had matches with The Rock, dude. He had matches with Roman Reigns. You know what I'm saying? Ric Flair. He wrestled a lot of guys, dude. A lot of fucking dudes.
No, Pat.
And he improved and he did what he had to do in all those matches.
But Pat, that's fair. But you just said something really, really key right now. He didn't do himself any favor. Again, the match against the Undertaker, giving himself a concussion. Again, that's again, no one's perfect. You're right.
Fern.
Getting in there.
But dude, he's trying to do stuff. He's trying to do stuff that he did when he was in his 20s, and to go back and do it's like an old musician, right? It's like an old musician, like Metallica. Let's take Metallica for example, right? Would you rather see Metallica in the 80s or Metallica now?
Well, no question. No question.
Right, exactly, because they were younger, they were full of more piss and vinegar, they were more interesting. The aggression, the authenticity to the emotion, the music, to everything, the attitude, it was there. Goldberg was trying to do shit that he did when he was younger as a wrestler, headbutt the door to, psych himself up, and he fucking knocked himself out because he's an old man. And now I think he had that awareness to kind of understand, hey, you know what? I'm an old man now, and I can't do that stupid shit I used to do. Again, look, I'm not a Goldberg fan by any stretch, but I just think that this guy gets a lot of unfair criticism. He gets a lot of unfair criticism. And he comes back, he does his part. This isn't some dude who's bending Vince over a barrel like, hey, I got to come back and win the world title or else I'm not coming back. No, he does his part. He's taking his name and he's using it to make younger guys. And you know what? Fair play to him, bro. I mean, fair play to him. He comes back. He's respected. They like him. I think that's all that really matters here.
No, listen, that's a fair point. All fair points. I just think that there's always going to be this perception about Bill that, he just wasn't as careful as he should have been. And I think that, to your point about Bret Hart fans, they're never going to buy the apology. Bret Hart fans are going to die on that hill. They're going to dig their feet into the sand and say, no, I'm sorry. Bill should have known better. Bill should have been more careful with his peers. I mean, there's always going to be that negative connotation. And it's really what side of the fence you sit on. I think that's the perception. And again, listen, I think the documentary on Sunday, I saw some highlights. Listen, he's a great story. This is a guy who went to the University of Georgia, went to play for the hometown Falcons, tried to. That's a story of a guy that you got to admire. Tried as hard as possible to follow his dream. He didn't. He couldn't. Injury prevented him. That happens. We don't have enough fingers and toes of the amount of examples guys have tried to make it in the NFL, and they just couldn't. But you know what? They went to do something else with their careers, and he did. And all power to him. He's made money. He's set up his family for life. He's become a crossover pop culture star. Great. I just think, again, some fans are never going to embrace him. And that's just pro wrestling, bro. And unfortunately, those are the marks that you're never going to win over. But at the end of the day, hey, it's the majority of the audience that'll appreciate his contributions. And I'm intellectually honest enough to say, hey, I understand his contributions. I understand what he meant to the business. He wasn't for me. But again, that's just my taste, just like everyone else is going to like what they like. But certainly, that footage coming out this week about that kick to Brett's cranium and obviously not looking as bad as it did all these years. You think about it, Pat, all these years we were so preconditioned to one specific angle that it looked a lot worse, right? And clearly this week we're learning that it wasn't. So, man, again, I think people will still be divided on this issue.
Yeah.
For sure. Other news, man, this week, kind of sad because I was a big fan of this guy. And again, this is where my Impact Pro Wrestling fandom is coming out. But Max Dupree, formerly LA Knight in NXT, formerly Eli Drake back in Impact, was absent this week on SmackDown. Apparently the founder, according to Wade Keller from the Pro Wrestling Torch this week, announcing that the founder of Maximum Male Models was nowhere to be seen, while his sister, Maxine, formerly Sophia Cromwell, nice piece of eye candy, by the way, on NXT 2.0, debuted. Wade Keller also reporting this week that sources closest to the situation are claiming that Max Dupree was rubbing people the wrong way backstage. He also said that, obviously, the big news this week, which we'll get to in the main event this week, apparently Max Dupree was going to be written out of the storyline anyway. That was inevitable, and that going into this week, Max Dupree knew that he was no longer going to be on television. It's uncertain what Max Dupree will be doing, let alone WWE, as no further information has surfaced. He could return to being LA Knight back in NXT. Man, this is a guy who I've liked him for a long time. He's a good worker. But again, a guy who stayed in Impact quite a long time. Triple H, when he was running NXT, saw something in Eli Drake, signed him, repackaged him as LA Knight, hell of a talker, but he's on the younger side of 40, and maybe had he gone to NXT 5 years before, who knows? We're talking about a different career path for him, but it seems like this is going to be the last we're going to see of him right now as Max Dupree, and I don't know. I met him at a meet and greet years ago. Nice guy. I'm not saying I know him personally. I'm just saying that, hey, he kind of just rubbed you the right way. Feel bad for him. I hope he hopefully rebounds somewhere.
We don't know what it's gonna entail, but hey, it's got the internet talking. It's got people talking. He's a really good talker. I thought what he was doing with that shtick was pretty good. they could put him back in NXT as LA Knight. He's a good enough worker where he could go down there and contribute. We don't know what the situation is. Obviously, the dirt sheets are saying that he rubbed people the wrong way. Who knows? Who knows what happened? Maybe he wasn't digging what he was doing. It didn't seem like he hated it because, man, he really went in with the character stuff. So I don't know. I mean, it's a variety of things. But again, let's see how it plays out. He could end up back in NXT. Being backstage sometimes is weird, man, because all it takes is maybe saying one thing to somebody, and I don't know, you just make a comment that you might think is quirky or funny or something in your head, and then next thing you know, that person who's connected to somebody who's close to the booker, all of a sudden thinks you're a fucking wacko, and then next thing you know, they're kind of looking out for you, and now everybody's kind of got their eyes on you, and they want to see if you're gonna act weird or if you're gonna do this or if you're gonna do that, and then eventually, they get rid of you. So I mean, these things happen, man. They happen in the workplace, and wrestling is no different in that regard. Let's see what goes on. I don't think we should speculate too much. Again, to your point, his age, I think, is something that we should also consider. But let's see how this all plays out for him.
Oh no, absolutely. And of course, speaking of LA Knight, whether he goes back to NXT, an important aspect of NXT that we've always loved was Triple H running it. Well, it seems, according to a handful of reports this week, Paul Levesque will be returning to the role of WWE Executive Vice President of Talent Relations. It seems that there's a lot of rejoicing amongst the internet wrestling community. Take that for what it's worth. Apparently, sources are telling sites like Fightful Select and others that talent are very optimistic about Levesque returning to that position. He assumes the role from Bruce Pritchard, who himself was serving as the interim EVP of Talent Relations after John Laurinaitis was placed on administrative leave following the revelation that he was under investigation for his role in a series of hush money payments allegedly made by former WWE Chairman and CEO Vince McMahon to former female employees. Subsequently, McMahon stepped down from his executive position in the Wicked Investigations. Dar Stephanie, who's married to Levesque, obviously, who doesn't know that by now, I'd be surprised, obviously was going to be assuming that role in the capacity. Obviously, the move of Triple H doing that now, all but certain, spells the end of John Laurinaitis from dealing with talent in that position. I'll tell you, man, I don't want to, to use the phrase you love to use a lot, I don't want to be a filthy mark, but it just seems over the years what we've read about John Laurinaitis being a snake and a yes man and one of those covert spies from Vince McMahon in the locker room. It just seems a lot of people might be rejoicing seeing Laurinaitis being out. And Triple H back as EVP of Talent Relations, man, hey, when he was running NXT, booking NXT, producing NXT, listen, a lot of us loved that version of NXT. Not to say that this version of NXT isn't great. Shawn Michaels is running it. It's great. But I think that Triple H back in this role is something that, A, we should rejoice because the last we want to hear is him being at home doing nothing, but also to, let's hope it doesn't accelerate any stress on him because it's a stressful job. We all know his health problems, his current health condition. I'm happy to see Triple H back in this position. What becomes of it, bro? I don't know, man. It remains to be seen.
I'm happy to see Triple H back in any capacity. He's a dude that you could tell loves the business. He breathes the business. He needs to be just involved with the business. It's, it's his life. A lot of what's going to go on, I guess, remains to be seen. Obviously, we'll kind of chime in with our thoughts about things concerning Vince McMahon's retirement later. But, it's definitely good to see him back. I think, from what we've heard through Billy Body, who is, the most reliable wrestling source out there, Stephanie and Triple H both feel like they have something to prove. So for me personally, I think it's a really interesting time, and it's going to be very, very fascinating to see where not only WWE goes, but the business goes in the next couple of years. So I think we're in for something really cool, and I think eventually, we're going to end up seeing some game-changing stuff from WWE again.
Listen, again, for us that have loved NXT from its inception, how it grew into a brand that people love to watch. I mean, I remember going to takeovers, man. Jesus Christ. And these takeover pay-per-views at the time were as good as some of the main roster shows, I know a lot of fans have still been resistant to NXT 2.0. I have not. It's still very good wrestling. And, it's interesting because, certainly not a lot of AEW news this week per se, other than one tidbit, which we'll get to next. But, for the developmental brand, as it's referred to, I hate to tell AEW marks, but NXT 2.0, a hell of a lot better to digest and watch than anything AEW produces sometimes. Because let's be honest, folks, this is not being mean-spirited, but whether you watch Botchamania or Botch Club on Instagram or AEW Botches on Twitter, guess what? NXT 2.0 is a bunch of girls and guys. Some are natural athletes. They're working. They're getting better. Hell of a lot, bro. You watch AEW Dark or Dark Elevation, which I have a few times, not a lot. But hey, NXT, whether it's under Triple H's supervision or Shawn Michaels' supervision, a hell of a lot better brand to watch on Tuesday nights than sometimes things we watch on Wednesdays and Friday nights, Pat.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you gotta understand, man, NXT is professionally produced. These are people who know the business, understand the business, that are putting this together. AEW, it's Tony Khan, it's very little oversight. And, the other thing too is, their audiences are different. AEW's trying to get that indie mark wrestling audience, those people that want to see the 50 high spots and no psychology. The people that, follow every word of Dave Meltzer and what's his name? Brian Alvarez and Vinny, Nikki, Bobby, Joey, Zippy, Duty, and what the other one, Turd. And, people who listen to Sean Ross Sapp, man. It's all the people that mark audience that feel like they know more and they understand wrestling better and feel like they're going to change wrestling or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, garbage wrestling's always been around. It's always going to be around. It's always going to exist. Mm-hmm. Indie wrestling is always going to be there. It's always going to exist. The aim of the programs, the aim of the styles, it's totally different. You're working to a niche audience, when you're working that kind of style. What Vince does, Vince isn't working to a niche audience, What the WWE does, they play to a global audience. They play worldwide. It's not just a small crowd here. It's a big crowd all over the world. So, yeah, man. I mean, I don't understand the hatred for NXT 2.0. I guess maybe because they heard Vince and Pritchard rebranded it, so anything automatically with those two, they're just going to hate and be resistant to it. But, yeah, I agree with you. And people, if you're listening out there, if you haven't fallen asleep already, please check out NXT 2.0 because they have a lot of good talent there, and some of those people that are on there are going to be big-time players on the main roster in no time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Before we get into our main event topic this week, though, Pat, yesterday Tony Khan doesn't do himself any favors by going on Twitter. And a shout-out to a guy, by the way, because I read Forbes magazine regularly, and there's a writer on Forbes named Alfred Kanua. And I love his caption. This is how he describes his columns when he writes about pro wrestling. I write about men in tights and the money they make for men in suits. I think that's a brilliant title to describe yourself as a contributor when you talk about pro wrestling, especially on a news magazine that is as respected and reputable as Forbes, which I read regularly. But interesting, though, Pat, Tony Khan yesterday, upon hearing the news, of Vince McMahon's retirement seem to be trolling Vince McMahon on Twitter. And this is what Alfred Canua from Forbes reported yesterday. Vince McMahon indeed shocked the wrestling world by his retirement yesterday. And AEW president Tony Khan didn't pass up a golden opportunity for yet another messy tweet. He wrote, quote, "Thanks to you wrestling fans and your great support of AEW. I'm grateful to now be the longest tenured CEO in pro wrestling. Thank you very much to every single person who watches at AEW on TV." Now, certainly Tony Twitterfingers has no shortage of making headlines on Twitter, though, Pat, because he apparently over time has sent some angry tweets to everybody from Big Swole to Randy Orton to even messing with, yes, Alfred Canua from Forbes himself, who's a respected journalist. Apparently, past tweets by Khan, typically sent on a Friday before Rampage, have included an announcement that he's investigating anti-AEW bots, in addition to trolling WWE moving venues for Money in the Bank due to poor ticket sales. Talk about being tone deaf. Khan's latest subtweet of WWE, naming himself the longest tenured CEO in pro wrestling, is guaranteed to piss off WWE brass as the supposed WWE versus AEW war continues to be petty, toxic, and at times delightfully scandalous. Nice description there by Alfred for sure. Goes on to say, unfortunately, Khan's antics seldom translate to a bump in the viewership on Rampage, which continues to struggle with viewership hovering around the 400,000 range for Friday nights. Pat, I think it's pretty classless for Tony Khan to do this, considering that, and we'll get to the top story in a minute, but this is not a good look for the CEO of All Elite Wrestling.
I mean, he's playing to his audience, dude. I think he maybe might have meant it as a joke. I think he was trying to be like witty somehow, but he's playing to his audience, dude. That crowd likes that, and he's doing what he's got to do to promote his product, by hook or crook, because obviously he needs it. So I think he thinks that, that kind of stuff will promote the product. Did it work? Did you say that it bumped the viewership, or did the viewership just?
Well, the numbers aren't out. The numbers aren't out on last night's Rampage. Okay. But right. I mean, it's still in the mid 400,000 range. That's embarrassing, bro. Yeah. Impact Wrestling is doing not that, but they're doing half of that. And Impact Wrestling doesn't have the budget that Tony Khan has. Jesus Christ.
Here's the thing, too, man. I think Tony Khan should just stop worrying about that shit and worry about what he needs to do. I think he just needs to worry about his product. But again, I mean, anybody who's been around the business, who knows anything about the business, all say the same thing. Khan's not growing his product. He's not doing anything with it to build an audience, to grow an audience. He's just counting on those same people to just continue to tune in, and consistently it's not going to work. And I think there's people out there that might not go back and watch AEW, might have seen it already, and it's just like, this is jitney. Like, I don't want to do this. This is I'm never going to watch this again. So I mean, hey man, he's promoting his business, and I think it's really funny, and it's really cute of him to try and poke fun at Vince. It's like, you little rascal, you shucks, you're funny, little pal. But Tony Khan's just being Tony Khan. Again, I think he needs to worry about his business and not worry about Vince.
Absolutely. And, of course, speaking of Vince, certainly, Pat, the biggest news item of the week, if not the year, if not the decade, if not perhaps the century in the world of professional wrestling, sports, entertainment. But as reported by every news outlet yesterday afternoon, right at the end of the news day, per se, longtime WWE chairman and CEO Vince McMahon officially announced his retirement amidst the ongoing misconduct allegations. Yesterday, Vince McMahon tweeted out, at 77, time for me to retire. Thank you, WWE Universe. Then, now, forever, together. Hashtag WWE, hashtag thankful. In a statement released by the company yesterday afternoon after the market closed, Vince McMahon called it a privilege to entertain the fans for so many years. He thanked his family and all of our past and present superstars and employees. McMahon said the company will be in good hands, specifically mentioning that now his daughter Stephanie McMahon and Nick Khan will hold the title of co-CEOs. Kind of interesting. I've never heard that before, but okay. WWE also announced Friday that Triple H, Paul Levesque, will return to his role as the Executive Vice President of Talent Relations with the company, as we just talked about. McMahon obviously stepping down from his position as CEO in June, obviously following reports of alleged misconduct. We've covered this at length already and at nauseum. It seems, Pat, from listening to Wall Street Journal radio yesterday, it would appear that journalists there are hinting that in the next week or two they're going to have more information about additional scandalous topics concerning Vince McMahon. Obviously, everything we've gone over on the show at length. It seems like the Wall Street Journal will be reporting on additional things that we have yet to learn. Some people might call this CYA by Vince McMahon. I think Vince is being smart as a businessman. I think he's looking at this as, you know what, I don't want to bring any negative attention or additional negative attention to the company that I built. I want to leave it in good hands with my daughter, with Nick Khan, with my son-in-law. I think Vince is taking one for the team here, retiring. I think he did it gracefully yesterday. Yeah, as you can tell, Stephanie, at the onset of SmackDown, you could tell she was fighting back tears as she was talking about her father. Listen, bro, it's the end of an era. As a guy who's watched pro wrestling since the age of 6, all I've ever known is Vince McMahon. So as boys, let's be honest, Pat, when we were kids, if we ever got into stupid trouble wrestling with our friends in the high school gymnasium or wrestling at home, jumping on beds, doing splashes, elbows, guess what? That's all because of Vince McMahon. So he's been essentially quite the developing force in our formative years, from childhood, adolescence, into adulthood. You now as a parent, watching pro wrestling / sports everything with your children. I mean, for the better part of our entire lifetime, Vince McMahon has shaped us in one way or form. And I'm thankful to Vince forever. I mean, yeah, there's some things I may have never liked booking-wise, but that's insignificant. That is so insignificant to the role of Vince McMahon. All the T-shirts I have, the DVDs I bought, merch, everything that I've loved about pro wrestling, it's because of Vince McMahon. And I think that, you know what? Let's give him his roses right now because he deserves it. Let's put the petty nonsense aside for the marks that want to nitpick about Vince and be all sanctimonious about, well, Vince is a douchebag and he's a morally bankrupt person. So stop, folks, stop being sanctimonious. Stop being so self-righteous. He's a human being. He's made mistakes. As long as nothing criminal, right? And that's not what's being alleged by the Wall Street Journal. I think that we're just going to learn about other hush money situations. He's a man. He likes vaginas. Can't blame him. We all do. And okay, he's retiring. That's it. But let's honor Vince for the contributions he's made to us as fans and our lives. If we've ever said suck it, if we've ever done the D-Generation X crotch chop, if we've ever been messing around in a pool during the summer and we've speared someone into the water, or we've given him a stunner or a rock bottom on the beach, Pat, that's all because of Vince McMahon. Let's thank him for what he's contributed to us, because honestly, we can't thank him enough, Pat.
Well, I mean, look, it's no surprise. I'm a great admirer of Vince McMahon and everything he's accomplished, what he's been able to do for the business, how creative he's been. I mean, it's, he's a one-off for sure. He's a one-off for sure. And I think that he's someone that's pretty much responsible for us even still talking about wrestling, because wrestling could have died a million times, I don't know how many times in the last 30 years. But Vince and his ability to see the future, his ability to be ahead of the curve, and to be able to innovate, whether, figuring out how to navigate social media and wrestling, navigate YouTube, navigate, your own network, RIP the network, handing it over to Peacock and selling it for stupid money, as my late great uncle David would say. Vince has always figured out a way to be able to come out on top. So yeah, it's crazy. I mean, obviously, there's a good chunk of marks out there that have been waiting for this day to come. Vince is the be all end all, and as we've talked about numerous times here on the show, there is no more toxic relationship than wrestling fans and Vince McMahon. Forget about your girlfriend whose house you showed up at with the boombox, playing Suavemente, and her dad throwing a shoe at your head. Forget about all that. That's not the toxic romance in your life. That's really at the forefront of all the bad shit going on. Vince McMahon and wrestling fans, that is a toxic relationship. And I think that wrestling fans need to have the objectivity to be able to look at Vince and not judge him as a man. Because, look, we're all flawed. We are all flawed in our own way. And Vince McMahon is no different than any of us. Vince McMahon is also a wrestling promoter, and wrestling promoters do that kind of stuff from the smallest level to the highest level. That's just what it is. And I just think we need to not judge Vince as a man, but judge Vince for his accomplishments and his contributions to the business, because I think that's really what's important. Take a look at your closet, take a look at your wrestling shirts, take a look at the collectibles, all the stuff you have. Most of it, Vince McMahon creations. And again, I don't think we would be where we are as a business. I don't think this podcast would even exist if it wasn't for Vince McMahon and Vince McMahon's contributions to the business. I know that there's also been a lot of speculation online that people feel, that he stepped down amid the potential Wall Street Journal report that's coming out pretty soon. I think Vince didn't really do it for that, because I don't think that really bothers him, and I don't think that they're really going to find out anything that is really going to be that crazy. Obviously, the court of public opinion is going to have their feelings on that, but, that's only really limited to them. And, I just think Vince did it mainly to preserve Rocky versus Roman at WrestleMania, to keep John Cena coming back, to not hurt these guys who have really worked very hard to establish themselves, in Hollywood, and more importantly, to not rob the fans of those guys being able to come back. Because I think with Vince sticking around, and from what we heard from Billy Body, John Cena claims it was insurance. People within the company feel that he was reluctant to do it because of, Vince's transgressions and everything going on. Rocky 2 was also a big question mark, but I think with Vince stepping down as retired, Stephanie, Nick Khan, Triple H, Pritchard, those guys in charge now, it's a different thing. So, I think he mainly did that, to preserve that for the fans and for Roman. Definitely for Roman, because Roman's given so much, and I'm pretty darn sure that Roman's dream match is him and his cousin. So I think Vince did what he had to do in the best interest of the company, not to drag everybody through the mud because of what he's done. And, maybe some people may not believe that because they believe that Vince is the devil incarnate, but I tend to believe that Vince is looking out for his business.
Pat, I'm with you. And I think that he's being smart. I think he's taking one for the team. He's taken one, I think, as they say, on the jaw to really, to really help ensure that the future of WWE as it's presently constituted right now, they got some big events coming up. They got SummerSlam coming up next weekend, which my understanding reading this week will be the first TV 14 pay-per-view in quite some time. We'll see where that goes. We have the Clash at the Castle overseas in September, which is a big show that they're going to have. And, of course, the other shows. You have Extreme Rules in Philadelphia in October, Survivor Series in Boston in November. So, again, you want to keep the wheel, moving along. You want to keep the assembly line, as they say, moving along. So I think that's going to be something that Stephanie, Nick Khan, Paul Levesque, I think collectively want to work together to ensure that this well-oiled machine keeps progressing forward. Pat, I think about Vince, bro. I think about the contributions, and I think about the idea that, what Vince has meant to us. Again, and I'm not trying to put a somber tone on this. Vince has now passed away. He's 77. He's still very healthy, takes care of himself, works out regularly. Again, for as long as I can remember, I would argue the biggest thing I can remember in my childhood. And again, there's an age gap here with you and me. But I think for me in my childhood, the idea back in the day, and this is still when MTV was still in its infancy. It had been around for a few years already, but the idea that pro wrestling was on MTV, the war to settle the score, the brawl to end it all, like just in the mid '80s, seeing pro wrestling on MTV, having that crossover appeal where now people, a new set of eyes, were looking at pro wrestling and taking it seriously, watching it. Because again, in the mid '80s, the NWA, was touring on the East Coast, but they weren't having the eyes that WWF was having. MTV wasn't showcasing the NWA, which go on to be WCW. They were showcasing the WWF, the World Wrestling Federation. And I just think it was like these small baby steps, these incremental steps as a wrestling fan. Like that's what just got me so energized to watch pro wrestling. And then obviously in the years ahead, what WrestleMania would become, and just let's be honest, every spring when you were a kid, adolescent, into high school, whatever, hey, before Verizon fiber optics, before streaming, there was pay-per-views, there was those analog cable boxes, in some cases illegal analog cable boxes. If you weren't a guy telling your classmates at school, hey, like, whose house are we going to this Sunday for WrestleMania? Bro, that's a part of childhood. That's a part of adolescence. Like, even still when I was in college living in New Brunswick, like, I'd still be, like, talking to my boys, yo, dude, like, what are we doing this Sunday? It's WrestleMania. And guess what? We'd scramble. Oh, all right, I'll give you $10, and I'll give you $10. And, like, sure enough, guess what? We'd all chip money in and watch at somebody's house or go to shows. And just, I don't think fans realize, especially for people that don't watch pro wrestling, the impact that Vince McMahon has had on us. Like, he has shaped our childhood. He's shaped our adolescence. He has shaped what we have come to grow and love is pro wrestling, right? Sports entertainment, all that. I don't know, man. Just, and seeing, if you've been reading Twitter for the last 24 hours, whether past or present stars, thank you, Vince. I mean, hey, it's nice to do that now, but people should always be thanking Vince for a long time. Because as you said, if it wasn't for Vince McMahon, pro wrestling might not even be around right now. We'd basically just be watching UFC or mixed martial arts or whatever. Vince McMahon kept this baby alive when it could have died 10 different deaths, Pat.
Absolutely. Even now, I'm looking in my room. I have an Eddie Guerrero figure, with the I'm Your Papi shirt. Vince McMahon took an amazing wrestler in Eddie Guerrero and brought out the personality in him that you would see spurts of here and there in his matches, but, you were never able to really get that full character that Vince was able to get out of him. And when Vince brought out that lie, cheat, and steal Latino Heat character, Eddie blew up, and he became even bigger than what he was, and he finally got his due, and Vince was able to take guys that, look, weren't maybe the biggest personalities, but was able to get something. Look at Bret Hart. Bret Hart, not the greatest talker in the world, not the most exciting guy, but Vince made this guy very charismatic and appealing, you know? Vince created The Undertaker. I mean, The Undertaker. This is a character that has spanned, how many decades? Almost 4 decades. You know what I mean? Like, I was a little kid when I saw The Undertaker, and my kids now are the same age when I saw The Undertaker. You know what I mean? Like, and we've all seen The Undertaker and have witnessed and experienced The Undertaker, whether, you know, it's a SmackDown or Raw or anything like that. You know, to be able to have that's amazing. You know what I mean? To be able to create a character that, you know, endures the test of time. I mean, The Undertaker is iconic. Iconic. LeBron James marks out for him. Israel Adesanya marks out for The Undertaker. These are Vince McMahon creations. You know, Terry Hogan. Taking Terry Hogan, creating that Hulk Hogan character. You know, letting him be that character. And again, just taking characters, being able to adapt with them, and also giving characters who had worked in other places and had some success a chance to really blossom and shine, you know? Giving Roddy Piper that spotlight to just be that iconic character that he was. You know, betting on himself to sell out, you know, the Pontiac Silverdome. You know what I mean? Get almost 100,000 people in there. Like, that's impressive for that time. You know, to put out, you know, pay-per-view the way he did. Everything that Vince did. And let me tell you something, man. You know, Vince was a gambler, man. Like, Vince really bet on himself and always went for it. And, you know, did it work out all the time? No. You know what I'm saying? The XFL, you know, ICO Pro.
the
you know,
WBS. I mean,
the WBS. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things that we could look at that didn't work out, but you know, you look at Vince overall on the whole, his contributions, everything that he's done. Again, he's been ahead of the curve almost all the time. Even when people have criticized him, even when people are like, "Why is Vince doing that?" And then in the long run, it pans out, and you're like, "Damn, that made sense." You know, John Cena. You know, John Cena. Oh, he shoved John Cena down our throats for years. Oh my God, John Cena. Everybody hated John Cena, right? He kept putting John Cena in that spot because John Cena was polarizing. John Cena got a reaction. He got a reaction, good, bad, or ugly. He got a fucking reaction. So of course he pushed him to the moon. And of course he did what he had to do with him, and it worked out in the long run. You know? And now John was enough of a character to be able to go on and act and do big things. You know? But again, Vince took that John Cena character and you know, created that. Like, you know, refined it. Told him what he was going to do, you know? And it became iconic for him. You know? And there's just so many others to name, but like, again, I really think that people have to have that awareness and understanding. I mean, at this point, you sound like an idiot if you can't really admit Vince's contributions to wrestling. You know what I mean? Like, I don't necessarily like Terry Hogan, but like, I understand what he meant to the business. You know what I mean? You don't like Goldberg, but you understand what he meant to the business. You know what I mean? And I just think fans need to have that kind of awareness, and they kind of have to be able to like realize like, hey, Vince is the reason why we're here. Vince is the reason why we're doing what we're doing. And again, I just think it's going to be really fascinating to see these next couple of years what Stephanie, Hunter, you know, Nick Khan, like what they're going to be able to do. And let me tell you something. If I were Tony Khan, I wouldn't be poking too much fun, man.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't be poking too much fun with those people.
Absolutely. You know? Pat, absolutely.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'll let you finish though. But
absolutely, because let me tell you something. You know, with the recent revelation that they're going to be changing TV 14, you have the smart business mind of a Nick Khan. You have a sort of fresh new ideas with Triple H, Stephanie, new leadership. I'm telling you, this is going to be disastrous in the ratings. This is going to be disastrous for buy rates, merch. I'm telling you, listen, you see Stephanie's influence already, signing Logan Paul, talking to maybe Conor McGregor, getting new eyes on the product. Guess what? I love Shark Week. I'm a big Discovery Channel fan. I'm sure it's going to do well starting tomorrow night. And I credit Tony Khan for getting involved with Discovery Channel. But guess what? For every one of those, Stephanie's going to have 6 bigger moves, and that's going to put AEW on the back burner real quick, brother.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that aside from the fact that Tony Khan should worry about what he's doing now and try and improve his current product as it stands, he shouldn't poke the bear too much, man. Because on the other side, you know, he has Stephanie McMahon, who is really intent on proving herself. Because let me tell you something, dude. People are always going to look at her as Vince's little girl. That's what she's going to be. And I think she's really intent on carving her own niche, on being Stephanie McMahon. You know what I mean? And you got Triple H, a dude who knows what it's like when there's another company that, you know, is trying to compete against you or poke at you or try and put you out of business, you know? Triple H understands what that's like, and Triple H knows what it's about. And Triple H is a dude that I wouldn't want to piss off either, because he, Stephanie, and Nick Khan, if they put their heads together, can, especially with TV14, can really take wrestling to another level. They really could. And I know this might sound crazy to some people, but they really have that kind of potential, man. And based on what they're doing now, you know, what's been reported, who they're negotiating with, whether it's signing Logan Paul, Conor McGregor, Tyson Fury, you know, they're going for big-time stars. They want to pull in big-time stars, and they want to create for the future. That's what they really want to do. And, you know, I think more importantly, they want to veer away, no pun intended, from those negative aspects of wrestling. You know what I mean? Whether it's steroids, you know, drugs, drunk driving, domestic violence, sexual assault allegations, hush money, and all that stuff. They're trying to move away from that. And it makes a lot of sense if you think about it, because the WWE, you know, they want to basically ensure that when it's time for them to sell it, or when it's time for them to move on, or whatever the case might be, they want to make sure that when they do cash out, it's at its highest price possible. You know what I mean? And they want to market it to more people overall. So if you want to make a more mainstream product, and you also want to make it more interesting, you know, you got to make sure that you keep the crap away to keep people coming back, especially nowadays, because, you know, the way things are on social media, you know? Mm-hmm. So I think it's a smart move, and I think Tony Khan needs to chill the fuck out. I think Tony Khan is fucking around, and he might be fixing to find out. So I think he needs to chill the fuck out. He needs to worry about his company. He needs to do what he's doing over there and not poke, you know, Steph and Hunter and Nick Khan too much, because we've seen that Nick Khan does not play around. We know Triple H and Stephanie, who and what they are. I think we're in for some interesting times here, bro. I really, really do.
Absolutely. And again, you know, it's sad to see Vince McMahon retiring, but, you know, this is his life. He may never really be away from the business, but I'm sure he'll still have some influence to some extent, but it's clearly Stephanie, Triple H, and Nick Khan's show now. So let's see what happens. Again, as you mentioned right now, in the next few years, in the way that the company moves forward, and see how they do business-wise. Folks, before we let you go here this week, one of our favorite segments, obviously, on the show is On This Day in Pro Wrestling History. And yes, Patrick, on July the 23rd in 2012, on this day, the 1000th episode of Monday Night Raw emanated live from St. Louis. And during this 3-hour, again, it was the announcement, really, of the 3-hour Raw, right? It transitioned from 2 hours to 3 hours. it started, this Hallmark new edition, right, with expanding the show, and it was viewed by 6 million people in the United States 10 years ago on this day. In the main event, John Cena cashed in his Money in the Bank contract against WWE champion CM Punk. Cena won by disqualification, though, after outside interference from the Big Show. At the conclusion of the program, The Rock intervened and was attacked by CM Punk, who subsequently turned heel, sort of sending some shockwaves throughout the wrestling world. Also that day, during that Raw, The Miz defeated Christian for the Intercontinental Championship. The wedding segment between AJ Lee and Daniel Bryan ended with AJ Lee walking out on Bryan after being named the new general manager of Raw by Mr. McMahon, and subsequently we would see Triple H challenge Brock Lesnar to their first ever encounter at SummerSlam that year. On this day in pro wrestling history.
Yeah, actually yesterday was also Shawn Michaels' birthday, and Shawn's 57. And also, back in 1994 yesterday, Vince McMahon, beat the U.S. government in the steroid thing there, all that good stuff. You say a lot better than I do.
But Pat, but it's interesting though, Pat. Again, on this day 10 years ago, it was like this is when we saw the format. It went from 2 hours to 3 hours, and I know marks and fans complain, "Oh my God, 3 hours every Monday now, Jesus Christ!" Well, sink or swim, come hell or high water, it has endured the test of time. And I'll tell you this much: 6 million viewers. I mean, we may not get back to that number again because again, there are a lot of variables in pro wrestling now. No, you're right. But again, there's a lot of variables, streaming, this or that. Again, there's a lot of variables that go into it. But, with Triple H and Stephanie and Nick Khan now, leading the ship, I got to tell you, man, Raw has been consistently in the 1.8, 1.9s, if anything, over 2s for many, many months now. We all know SmackDown on Friday nights on Fox is consistently over 2 million. I got to tell you, man, I think this new direction, if TV 14, obviously whenever that starts, I got to tell you, man, the days of 2, maybe 3 million people watching Raw, that could be coming back a lot sooner than we think, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, there's a lot to consider. The TV 14 thing's going to be big. They're going to kind of, go for that new Attitude Era type of vibe. The people they're signing, the people they got in developmental. There's a lot to look at here, man. And again, I think that you have Triple H, you have Steph. Triple H, especially, with his his heart condition, and stuff like that. Like, that's a game changer, dude. I mean, that kind of makes you reevaluate your life. And I think he's definitely going to use his time, in a very measured manner, and I think he's going to make the most of all these opportunities. And again, I'm really just excited to see what they come up with, where they take the business, what strategies they utilize. I mean, and again, I just think we're in for a very interesting time here for wrestling in these next couple of years specifically.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Great show here this week. Pat, before we call it a day, what should we look out for?
Well, I just want to actually give a big shout out to a football player, a soccer player here in the MLS, Valentin Tati Castellanos. Today is his last match with New York City Football Club. He's a player who's won us the MLS Cup. I was there, and it was one of the best days, if not the best day of my life. And I'm eternally grateful for Tati. He's heading off to Spain to go play at Girona. So, I'm going to be watching the boys in blue, taking on Inter Miami. And just a big shout out to Tati. And, we're going to miss you, and you're forever a New Yorker.
Wow, absolutely. End of an era for sure. A lot of eras being ended this week, ladies and gentlemen, and great tribute there by you, brother, again, and for his contributions to NYCFC. Again, the only banner lately in the new Yankee Stadium. We hope that changes in the next few months. We'll see. But certainly his contributions cannot go, unaddressed for sure. Folks, check out Monday nights on Jersey First TV. This Monday I will have Butler, New Jersey. It's a great town in Morris County. Ryan Martinez, fellow conservative, and a big pro wrestling fan. So we're going to talk about, obviously, everything going on in politics in New Jersey. And certainly, of course, the retirement of Vince McMahon. We'll be talking about that this Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Jersey First TV via YouTube and also on Facebook Live via StreamYard. Folks, again, we want to thank you for joining us here. Don't forget to write to the show, workinthemarks@gmail.com. If you have a suggestion for a guest or a topic maybe in the coming weeks and months, we're going to be revamping the show a little bit as the summer comes to a close. You want to stay tuned for that as we'll be announcing that in the coming weeks. But write to us, workinthemarks@gmail.com. I promise Pat or I or both of us will reply promptly. So do write to us, workinthemarks@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow the show on Instagram @working_the_marks. Of course, make sure you follow PBR on his great Instagram @PaddyRican. That's PADDYRICAN. Of course, follow yours truly as well @NoFilter Uribe, URIBE. Also check out PBR on his Twitter @PatrickSKVM. And of course, my own Twitter as well @NoFilter Uribe. Check out Working the Marks on Facebook, folks, for those of you that subscribe to Facebook. And for those of you fortunate enough not to get shadow banned, like yours truly, that, apparently Mark Zuckerberg and Fascist Book likes to do a lot. But check out Working the Marks on Facebook whenever you can. A shout out to Dee Rotten, our great guy who promotes for us, administers the page, does great promotions. God bless Dee Rotten. He's a great guy. And can't say enough about his contributions to the show. Right, Pat?
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. Big shout out to him. He's a friend of mine. Dave's a scumbag, by the way. I don't know if you know that. Dave was in my band, the Hudson County Scumbags, a long time ago. He played with us at our last show. You might want to give that one a check out on YouTube. Hudson County Scumbags live at Pearl Studio. Hell of a night, hell of a show. I believe I wore a Rastafarian wig, and I slow walked to the stage to the tune of Take My Breath Away by Berlin. It was a memorable evening for sure. So big shout out to Dee. Thank you. And Dee, you're forever a scumbag. And I mean that in the nicest way possible.
Pat, wait a second. Were you engaging in some blatant cultural appropriation there? Did I hear that correctly?
In what regard? What's this you speak
I'm
of?
asking. Well, if you're telling me you're wearing Rastafarian gear, folks, for our audience at home, if you've seen Patrick in person, he's a lot of things, but he doesn't look Rastafarian, folks.
Here's the thing, okay, and I'll tell you where that came from. A long time ago, I'd say about 9 years ago, I went to a wrestling show, and I used to go to a wrestling show that my friend Angel used to promote. Shout out to Angel Kane D, former booker of Jersey All Pro Wrestling and former wrestler, Jersey All Pro Wrestling Tag Team Champion. And Angel invited me to the show. So I'd go to this show, and apparently there was a guy that was wrestling on the show that wore a Rastafarian wig that looked like me, and people thought that I was this Rasta Kingston Snow guy. I don't know. We've never been in the same room together, but people say we're the same person. I don't think so. I know one thing's for sure. If I do see him, I'm definitely going to go for the hair because, I want to see if he's really a robot or not or something. I don't know, but either way, this is how this rumor came about. And no cultural appropriation, perhaps just a case of mistaken identity. But either way, big shout out to Dee.
Good stuff there. Ladies and gentlemen, he is New Jersey's premier wrestling analyst, the immortal PBR. I am New Jersey's premier journalist, Fernando Uribe, the professor here. And always remember, for all you people out there marking out, always remember, we're here to check you because we are working the marks here on Blog Talk Radio. We'll see you next week here, folks. Stay dry, stay cool and hydrated, enjoy yourselves. Sharing is caring. Share the episode when you can on all your social media. And always remember, let's keep on talking.